Hello. The days have become long again. I know that there's nothing I can do. I know that. You know? Anyone who knows anything about magic, magic with a K, not like Penn and Teller, illusory magic, like the esoteric tradition, they understand the things that I'm saying. They're not possible, they exist. Right? They're not likely, they're real. Right? The wisdom game, the psychic mind game. And so David Mamet touches on it at the end of his masterclass. Right? That telepathy gets you in. So, I chose to be a horse's ass. And I know that they all see that I really didn't need anything from any of them. Right? That right, he could have given me 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, however much. 1 million, half a million. Right? For failing his initiation, I guess is the only way to put it. I'm seeing it a lot clearer now. But I would have never sought anything from any of those studios, like anything from any of those systems. Right? I would have found my own actors, I would have bought my own cameras, I would have done like everything myself and said we don't need to do things the way that they do things, and here's why. Right? I don't need to control your mind to know that you're talented. Right? But I've been crying a lot today, been my essay, and I wrote Rolling Stone magazine yesterday. And so, magical sieges, celibacy is the new sexual revolution. It's very funny. I know that I'm feeling a lot of guilt, maybe, over destroying his marriage, which is never what I wanted. Over just obliterating the myth of it all. It's so. Now I get my velvet coffin, I suspect. Or. Right? They all try to kill me, or. Nothing happens and he just keeps us all miserable forever, But. It seems like. Fish. Maybe they sacrifice themselves in some way to end it, to get a bunch of pressure from Sony Pictures, just to prevent me from being disgusting once they pay me, Psychic chess, everything's moves, everything's calculations. But I do get the feeling now that in February of 2024, when Quentin announced that Brad Pitt was playing the movie critic, the reason that he was able to cancel that movie so easily is because he never began making it. Because Daniela has not been happy for a long time. And when he burned me, she told him in no uncertain terms, if you start making this movie, I'm going to this man. Because, right, there's no one else. So, maybe it always had to go this way. Because it was always the virtue of the heart, wasn't it? It was on the chopping block, you know? And so, you know, the people who go see the movie, they don't know that Quentin, you know, got humiliated by his peers, and the people who go see Fish won't know that Fish humiliated their fans. Fish humiliated one of their fans, and he got humiliated among his peers by Hollywood. And that's the trade-off. I don't really know, you know, don't really know what the truth is. I know there's a part of me that wants to go to this open mic night and read my essay, which I've condensed into 2 pages at 7 font. And it's as ruthless as it gets, you know, as far as deconstruction, psychological analysis. You know, it's no one's business, you know. I know that it cost me nothing to wait. I know that, you know, but I feel like the days are long because something's about to occur. I know I've been alone long enough. I know that is true. I know that he wasn't asking too much. I know that I was a coward, you know. I know that. And I had my reasons. And I've said I'm sorry enough, you know. But I suppose I'll never be sorry enough, you know, on another level, you know, because of how alone he is. And that I was supposed to see that, you know, like that's what I was supposed to see. Virtuistic horseshit. Boom, it's right there, you know. Now you bark and I call you son, you know? And I hated it. Now you bark and I call you father. But, one second. Suppose I'll read it now. Why not? Edited, ribbed for her pleasure. Very funny. Abstract. The movie critic was canceled on April 17th, 2024. As a result of a series of letters I sent Quentin Tarantino about playing the role, which he would have let me do, but only in exchange for letting me be treated the way he treats the women, Harvey Weinstein's victims. And when he failed to trap my psyche at a screening of Jackie Brown in June of 2024, he spent the subsequent 2 years trying to compel me to suicide, and the entire industry around this thing is aware of it. Sony Pictures, Stacey Sher, WME, UTA, Wasserman Group, all co-conspirators in Quentin's design to compel me to suicide. This essay is to show the likelihood of Quentin Tarantino having Kallman syndrome as the psychological foundation for the violence in Quentin's films, as well as the pornographic scenes in the continuing adventures of Cliff Booth, formerly the movie critic, as well as the syndrome being the psychological impetus for developing psychic clairvoyant faculties
which allowed Quentin to help Harvey Weinstein compel those women to sign. This is a novel theory, which, if true, in fact voids all contracts, as they are all signed under legal duress. An unknown psychological manipulation which is all but indefensible. Therefore, the signatures were not acquired of sound mind. They will both likely lie, but his wife cannot deny how he is. None of the women can. If put under oath, I believe the women will tell the truth about Quentin's psychic prowess. Daniela and any other young woman under his control are subjected to the most disgusting psychological terror anyone can endure. And it is my contention that Harvey only stopped succeeding because everyone around Quentin demanded he change his behavior, which led to his sham marriage. Daniela is miserable and disgusted by Quentin. She wanted me to play the movie critic, not only for her daughter to get an excellent husband, but for her to have a chance at having a life outside of Quentin's baby dick sex dungeon. I want to focus on the science. I've written well north of 1 million words about this saga to every institution or agency you could fathom. And so I want to say clearly starting out that I hope not to ramble. Forgive me. Now allow me to ramble. This essay is very much stream of consciousness. It behooves me to say that the highest level of critical analysis demands that I rewatch all of Quentin's movies. I cannot do that. So I pick and grab from my recall. And thinking now in earnest, 8 examples emerge, just under 1 per film. Now, could I neurotically obsess and find 30 more? Sure. I think we all agree 8 is enough. Kallmann syndrome, in its simplest explanation, is a rare genetic disorder or deficiency that results in a person never going through puberty hormonally. The organs grow, the body reaches full maturity, but the sexual organs never develop. Surely this must be a difficult, miserable life if unresolved psychologically. In the medieval tradition, the divine fool is touched, and therefore we must protect and venerate them. These people make excellent monks, writers, intellectuals, musicians, artists, doctors, scientists. If someone afflicted by this condition can harness their physical irregularity through discipline, the natural asceticism of this condition is a good breeding ground for virtuosity. But with regards to Quentin, it's both, is it not? I can deride and be cruel, but is it not harder to say that he is in fact much more than, seeing how far he went, in spite of living in such a state? There is a story online about Quentin's father in a violent situation with a homosexual coming on to him. So we have an instance of his father being a violent actor. It is my belief that Tony Tarantino, Quentin's father, was a wicked, violent man. And when his mother, long may she live, at the tender age of 14, told Tony she was pregnant, he proceeded to punch her right in the gut as hard as he could to induce an abortion. But was only strong enough to destroy fetal Quentin. This is the saddest part. Divine fools. The moment his father impacted into his mother's abdomen, the pressure point of the impact prevented full development of Quentin's chromosomal map, being the exact moment of cellular division, and the obtuse pressure upon the dividing cell prevented full complete division. And the resulting corruption rippled out in every cellular division thereafter, causing ultimately Kallmann syndrome, perhaps corrupting the development of his nasal passageway, which prevented the hormone from developing in the pituitary. Or maybe something like that. It is worth pointing out, as I write this, the conjurer of thunder stirs storms outside my door. And I fear Quentin is so sick he might murder Daniela and those children before killing himself any time. Or send someone to murder me, or come himself to kill me. And as the tornado sirens wail, I regret not submitting. Despite knowing I am justified, for me, for the women, but I couldn't respect his behavior. I saw someone overtly manipulating me. It felt disgusting. It still does. But they needed me to relax. I hope Quentin is strong enough to relax. And see that I love him. I do see him as a spiritual father. But, in truth, as the days pass, I cannot help but wonder, how much have I taught him? Who is the teacher in this formula? If we say the syndrome and its cause has rooted completely a deep frequency violence in his DNA from his assault in the womb, it reveals an immediate justification for all of the violence in his films, as well as subtle clues to his yearning to be whole, in love, a child of God, as we all do. So his mother is assaulted upon announcing her pregnancy to Quentin's father, fracturing cellular fetal Quentin. So an actor exacts violence upon a womb in the abdomen. Let's begin at the beginning. Tim Roth is shot in the abdomen, and the cop who gets his ear cut off and doused in gasoline reveals the first shots of bondage. The foot monologue, as well as the gimp in Pulp Fiction. 5-point palm exploding heart technique. The stuntman killing all the women in his stunt car in Death Proof, and the women killing him in the end. Melanie Laurent burning down the movie theater in Inglourious Bastards. Walton Goggins' monologue about cutting off Jamie Foxx's genitals in Django Unchained. Channing Tatum shooting off Sam Jackson's genitals in The Hateful Eight. Stuntman Cliff Booth murdering his wife on a boat by eviscerating him with a spear gun through the abdomen, says the novel. Which brings us to the movie critic, The Continuing Adventures of Cliff Booth, which represents the back half of this essay. But let's take at least one paragraph to deconstruct the 8 examples given. In Reservoir Dogs, Tom Roth gets shot in the abdomen. Psychologically, that's Quentin saying, "I'm not my father. I hurt men where he hurt women. I command his profession and profit off his violence upon me." The foot monologue, so famous, is Quentin expressing his erotic identity. I gain nothing in being cruel. But there it is. The gimp is an expression of control and rebellion to his infertility. Plato's Symposium. Bearing children is the only immortality we know. So if we are denied, we bind the world that denies us our immortality to control as much as we can. Example number 9. Bruce Willis stabs what's-his-face in the abdomen, thrusting the samurai sword back, suggesting sexual impotence. The 5-point palm exploding heart technique says everything, doesn't it? I want a beautiful woman to destroy my heart with her hand. A truth biologically that can never be. Spiritually, emotionally, any other way. But that primary way. That most primal human machine. Gone forever. I could wax poetic on potential and offer another 60 pages on tactics, but we acknowledge how difficult it must be psychologically. Death Proof marks the introduction of the stuntman, now seeing his third iteration with the Continuing Adventures of Cliff Booth, played by Kurt Russell, character name unknown. But the stuntman, which is Tony, kills the women with his stunt car until a woman kills him. Melanie Laurent burning down the movie theater with celluloid suggests he fears his sexual dysfunction might destroy his career. A triptych. Walton Goggins' monologue about castrating Jamie Foxx is obviously Quentin resenting big black cocks, which is funny and sad. It is also worth mentioning that Jamie Foxx fighting for Kerry Washington is his last plea to find love. Channing Tatum literally shooting off Sam Jackson's genitals is more of the same, no? This brings us to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Seems clear Daniela wanted Sharon Tate. Why wouldn't she? Maybe is a better question. And the easiest answer is that he did not want her floating like a hot fairy all over that set a bunch of days because of how it is. Because she's a freak and super fine and probably can't be tamed. It's my dog, sorry. But that makes sense psychologically. Keep the singing bird caged. Again, Cliff Booth cuts his wife in half through the abdomen with a spear gun, right? And Mikey Madison, that fiery woman, gets burned. It is my contention she is scarred up in the Continuing Adventures of Cliff Booth. And this is a source of her desire for me to play the role, to say, right? I'm not a bitch with a fucked up face who got tied up and fucked on Quentin Tarantino's set to justify his impotence and underdeveloped sexual organs. I met an angel. That's the story now, I guess, if we could be together. But all the same, she got burned real bad. Scorching a woman with his mind, which she cools out of by getting wet, as in the way he treats his wife, Mikey, Sydney, and the other women in his life. Now the movie critic, or the Continuing Adventures of Cliff Booth, accent on continuing. Of course, I don't know, in truth. This essay is more of a Socratic dialogue, an intellectual rumination. But seems pretty obvious Brad Pitt and I now believe Timothée Chalamet tie up and fuck Mikey Madison, Sydney Sweeney, and his wife Daniela Pick and her daughter Sophia, or whatever her name is. So Mikey is scarred up, Brad's maybe singing off something off key while raping one of them, and none of the women had any agency in their lives. Quentin took everything about writing out of the script and put more sexual sadism and bondage because the film was never about a writer. Right? It's about his complexes and how he directs these women with acts of psychic direction while they're penetrated by other men because he has no dick. I have said for many years now, since 2018, that I am a powerful psychic clairvoyant, and it took me almost 5 full months to see the scope of Quentin's designs over the world. In the beginning, I believed it to be my clairvoyance solely. I wrote the letters, people read the letters, I'm in their mind. Easy. But when he said nothing and stopped accepting my mail, the whole thing became malignant. And after the canceling of the film, almost 2 years ago to the day as I write this, it still took me another month to have it crystallize. Psychic observation, remote viewing. It dawned on me at the witching hour, waking up at 4:15 to go to work. I had the thought, is now the only time I have my mind? So the women wanted me to play the movie critic. Daniela, I guess, because she doesn't want to be miserable forever. And the others because they liked me. That's all, no other reason. Mutual respect. And when Quentin went full goblin, returned my mail and refused to say anything, when I dropped my essay, then Mikey and Sydney got hot, because I burned him. And now that he denied them the right to speak to me this entire time, we all see that we have to come together, like forever. He fucked us. Very funny, psychic mind games. But I do see this always had to happen, didn't it? He brought him up wrong. I hate seeming pretentious, but they saw something to trust. I often say my mind is a mountain. I know they all agree. This is always what terrified Quentin, as this is all he has, and I get that. But he brought him up wrong. They're a mess. It's obvious now. Admittedly, it was not so obvious for a long time. It took me literally all of 2025 before I realized the entire industry is not interested in this kind of perverse occultism. And he's likely being this way because the women need a man which I could not see. Every time I see Daniela's picture, I get hot. Sure, Mikey, Sydney, that witch outside the theater with gold skin and great legs. Yes, please. But that's outside the scope of my clairvoyance. If I seek sexual gratification through my clairvoyance, I lose my clairvoyance. And so those witches really had to beat me over the head with it. And they did, and they're great, I'm sure. But they had to just keep looking at Quentin, especially after I admitted the secret source of my clairvoyant mastery. 8 years of celibacy. A full year before they shot the film. Saying things to Quentin like, you're an asshole and a creep. And he's an angel and you'll never win. But all the while me oblivious until a whole season elapsed after they shot the film. And after continuing in his need to be so disgustingly evil, I finally realized it's because of the women. And having only thought of that right now as I type, it is also worth mentioning that this must be related to the idea of me watching the film in the women's minds. They can't stand that thought, knowing how pure I was every step of the way. But, Big Dick Psychic Dragon, I felt them because they're awesome, and that they're hot is irrelevant. I'd help anyone in such straits if I knew it was occurring. They never deserved to be treated in such a way, and we have the right to be happy on our terms, on God's terms, not Quentin Tarantino's. Daniela, Trapped, Singing Bird. They all saw through me a pathway to justifying their submission to this baby dick creep. And when I proved him an impotent psychic, when he refused to let any of them see me, he proved to everyone else they have no independence, truly. No free will. They got so far as to suggest to me, but were unable to speak to someone they wish to see, and were unable to get out of acting in the film, despite considering their contributions to be first-degree rape, if done by anyone other than me. So we say that Quentin syndrome has accidentally, it would seem, by virtue of practice alone, cultivated a strong psychic clairvoyance in Quentin. Oliver Sacks touches on this in a real way. That trauma often has the facility to engender novel attributes up to and including extrasensory perceptions. If he has been doing it his entire life, say 30 years, 40 years, it tracks he would have a strong command of remote viewing psychic occultism, a truth which anyone close to him is aware of. It is my contention that as soon as Quentin discovered BDSM, he saw a path to expressing his sexuality, because if the women are bound, like his mother, he can make them have an orgasm without having to actually fuck them, using, I would guess, oversized sex toys. Anyone who knows about Big Jerry now has the luxury of considering it in a whole new light, thinking on those stories of Quentin taking pictures with it on the shoulders of the actors sleeping on set. A perverse humiliation that they all indulge him on, because they don't actually love him. They pity him. Divine fools. As far as occultism is concerned, it is my belief, though I speculate, that the first time he convinced a woman into bondage by exercising his mind, it set into motion a sequence of discovery that leads all to the esoteric tradition. The first time you realize you can exercise your mind over the world to induce change, it is a high which can never be surpassed. This led him to behave the way he does, which I contend is the actual source of Harvey Weinstein's success all those decades, because Quentin was assaulting their minds into submission while Harvey was forcing their clothes off. The same thing that occurs in The Movie Critic. This design is the same tactic that will always compel these women to say nothing, because they are afraid he will practice high evil upon their psyche and soul, just like when he manipulated all of Harvey's victims into signing their dignity away. He'll have no trouble pointing to the permission waivers signed for The Movie Critic. The actors are Harvey. It is my contention that Quentin took Daniela for a wife to show the industry that his revolving door of satanic initiation would also be closing as Harvey settles into prison, because they all understood how instrumental he was in allowing it to go on as long as it did. But all the same, his script ties up the women, and has his wife-beating buddy, as well as that other loser, Timothy Chalamet, fucked him violently in bondage, which is what has occurred in his house all these decades, but with huge dildos instead of his cock, because he doesn't have one. He's a eunuch. But now he parades his disgusting sadism through the avatars of Brad and Timothy all over the world and tries to elicit a laugh because he is still his father. His perspective on sex is crude, possessive, adolescent, mechanical. And so he can only assault women's genitals physically through acts of psychic direction in writing a film where the women in his life play porn stars who get fucked on camera for money. As in, see? This is how I, Quentin Tarantino, fuck. The stud bruises her genitals as best as he can, while I destroy her psyche with clairvoyance at the same time, because I am a eunuch, because my father assaulted my mother while she was pregnant and broke me, and so I resent women for being weak and being vulnerable, because my mother was not strong enough to prevent my father from assaulting me in the womb. So these scenes of total control embed my dick complexes into everyone who watches if they get aroused. And Quentin can feel himself the spiritual father to all the potentially equally sterile and genetically diseased babies that are conceived through the role play of his cartoonish, disgusting, perverse movie. So, there it is. And of course, he's manipulating me the whole time I was reading that. It's much more vicious if you actually read the words. And I know no one watches these videos. You know, he's the only one who watches these videos. Him and Daniela. You know, whomever else. 7 views, 10 views. Right? But, right, this is the truth. This is the truth that the women all saw. You know, that's the reality. And so they wanted to bring me up because they justified it through me. Right? And so and then, you know, in my mind, I didn't see that, right? Because Quentin manipulated my friend to not go, who's a really pretty girl named Rachel. Very talented. She's a singer. And I know that, like, his heart, you know, in his heart, he's like, oh, you marry into my family. Like, me, right? And that's, right? Like, that's, you know, it's not cool. It's just not cool. Right? So when he turned his back, I saw my secret. That's like, boom. Like, that's like the secret to my clairvoyant mastery. Like, that I'm just like him, and I'm not. He's worse, you know. Like, and I only realized this in like the last 2 weeks, like the true scope of it, you know. That he behaves the way he does because he's worse than me, you know. And that's right. And so and that's why, you know, I don't know. I kind of do see it, you know, where he's with Fish and I'm with the two of them, and everyone's telling us, like, it's okay, he's not gonna fuck with you. It's okay, he's not gonna fuck with you, you know?
I hope, nothing happens, but, like, it's too dense, like, this is the point, right? Like, anyone who comments on these videos is all him, it's just all him, like, fucking with my mind, like, I know that. And so I've just been erasing all the recent comments, because I know that it's just him, it's just him trying to engage me in his way. And so, of course, it's about my vow, isn't it? That's like, the one thing, that one thing, which, maybe it was a curse, like in a real way, like, sure, that I turned into a virtue, but all the same, but I have to let go of that. And, my heart's always open. That's the point. My heart's always open, And Quentin's isn't. That's the point. Like, he's deeply fearful man, just like me, of the truth, of being vulnerable. And I know that he's like, I can't imagine, I feel like he gets like a lot of massages and he like eats mad Xanax like all the time, and I would too, like, for sure, that's like, right? And so when I think about like the days leading into it, like when I didn't want to masturbate, it's not that I do a lot, I don't. I could, if I want to, but anyway. I know that that's what he wrestles with, that he has no spiritual balance, and it's really sad. And I don't either, but I can, I just have to sacrifice. I have to sacrifice my loneliness, like I have to sacrifice, like, my humility, like I have to humiliate myself, like in a real way, like not in a superficial way, and I just felt that was unnecessary, all those years ago. I felt that I can be more than needing that. And so, I was supposed to use that to get to the top of Hollywood's mountain. And, if we come together, then I suppose I have, like in my way. And the movie, how much of that movie is me, it's... I know I was there, like, every day, It's so disgusting to consider, It's so disgusting to consider how much I did, and how he still spent that whole time just being evil, being awful. When I think about the United Way, when I think about writing those thank you notes and how much I was getting out of that, and how awful he was the whole time, and the hypodermic needles, and he forced me into feeling uncomfortable there, and of course it's because it made the women want to leave, that's the point, because they know what I've been doing, and they say, why are we still here, like, what gives you the right to treat this man this way, He doesn't care about your money. He doesn't care about your lawsuits. And I've just trusted him every step of the way, except for the only moment that I needed to. Like, that's like the real point. That when he said that there was no daughter in February of 2025, I said, oh, so you want me to die? That's I see now. And that's like basically my baseline now until I see some sort of legal resolution out of it, until I see something, up to and including, a lot of money, not $1 million anymore, $500 million, $600 million. Like the women, of course, I still want them. I don't know what he did to them. I think that they maybe no one has touched them for 2.5 years. Right? Has that been the case with all of them? I don't know. I think maybe. And so that's like, right. That's another testament to Quentin's legacy, isn't it? Right. That in wanting to make a sexual film, he turned everyone into him. Right. Because he denied them their natural sexual impulses, right? And so this is where we're like touching on like not mastery, or we're touching on like occult evil. That's the whole point, isn't it? Right? And he's a gatekeeper, that's how he saw his role. And I know that in his mind he was like, oh, I have to do it this way, because then, right, once he starts fucking her, she's not going to let me touch her anymore, and then, right, but if I have this, right, because he doesn't want to resolve himself, that's, and I'm still not convinced that he's not like, polluting my YouTube feed with a bunch of AI generated videos, hoping I'll watch them, and I'm shutting down in like a real way, I am. And I have my essay, and we'll see what happens with Fish. Hopefully it's, I don't mean to be pretentious, I don't mean to say like, oh, hopefully I get the most beautiful woman in the world, God, like it seems so asinine to say that, but like anyone who knows this whole saga knows how completely disgusting it is. Like this isn't the ravings of a lunatic, that's the real point, that's the real point. Like Hollywood's allowed to have their initiation. Hollywood's allowed to be interested in perverse occultism that I find disgusting. I have the right to opt out, right? And so that in no way gives Quentin the right to abuse the Kabbalah, to abuse wisdom, to abuse the esoteric tradition, to try to put me in the grave so that he can keep control over a woman who hasn't been in love with him for a long time. Like that is disgusting. If they were all on the same page, right, then they would all just have given me nothing. He would have said, you blew it, here's some money, you go do a little Hamlet in New Jersey, And I would have said, yeah, I know you're right. I appreciate it, dude. Like you keep that scene. I do love you, I want you to do well, and I'll say good things about the movie. That's the whole formula, But if the truth is that, right, that I was drinking a lot in February when he announced Brad, because Daniela was drinking a lot in February, because like we're like here in like each other's hearts, and her daughter, that it's like a weird like menage, because like they can't do this thing anymore. They can't do Quentin's mind game anymore, Then that's, right, that's not mastery, that's not, I can't make the women love you. I can't do that. Only you can do that. And I'm sorry. I should have seen it. Sure. God. I hate this. I hate thinking about this so much. Just like Sydney Sweeney does. I'm sure. Just like Mikey Madison does. Like yes. Like okay. Like cool. Like yeah. Like. Oh, they want to fuck, great, I don't do that, no, no one's gonna do that in this formula, oh, you're so fine, like, god damn, like, yes, ma'am, anybody else, so, I go to work, I go home, that's the whole formula, it's not, right, and so with this movie, that's the point, right, that there's a real distinction, there's a real blur in, how the two, right, intersect in a real way. And so, whatever happens with the movie, whatever they say occurred with the movie, I don't know, I can't say, I suppose, the last chess move is if he turns me into him, as far as, a secret sexual initiation. That's kind of funny, actually. I guess that's, that's the last fuck you, because it could have been vulgar, in the public eye, where they all knew, but now they'll just all know. It's not necessarily a public thing. It's me and the two of them.
that's like where it's like, oh, I bet you think they kiss each other and he fucks all three of them? You know, it's just stupid. But that's like, anyway, it's not what I wanted. It's not, it is what I want. I'm not gonna say it's not what I want. He wants me to say it's not what I want, but like, why wouldn't I want that? I couldn't have seen it. That's like, we're touching on earthly desire. Right? I'm an ascetic, like I like suffering. Right? That's what I always tell people. They say, oh, I don't know what I want to eat. And I say, you haven't thought about it enough. You should wait. Right? That's the point. And so I suppose I took the sufferer's path. I don't know. I don't know what Hollywood's opinion is. I don't know what the next few days will yield for me. Beyond fear, the days, they just keep dragging on and on and on, and I don't feel compelled to write or do anything, And I know that the 17th will be here soon enough, that the minutes, it's like every 60 seconds, it's just like agony, it's, And the thought of him, I don't know, I guess it's a fair exchange as far as fish, and because I don't have anything else to give him, do I? And he doesn't have anything else to give me. So... I know that the band is I don't know anymore. I don't know what to think about them anymore, They didn't play on my birthday last year, but they're playing on my birthday this year. So they're gonna have something about the movie on that day as well. And I'll have my angels, or a bunch of money, or nothing, or nothing. But if Fish does something this Friday with Quentin Tarantino, right, I'll get my piece of the pie, and it's a lot more than it would have been. And so, Quentin's marriage has been in the dumps since COVID, right? Since he turned out a bunch of Tel Aviv whores, put his father-in-law on the ground. Just gotta let her go, Just gotta let her go. Because he wasn't good to her. That's the point. And I'm not saying I'm better. I know that's what he says in his mind, like, oh, if I forgive him, then I'm admitting he's better than me. I was an idiot. That's like the whole formula. That's all. I was afraid because I was alone. I didn't want to trust it. It seemed reptilian, It seemed satanic, But I see it from his side too. A little clearer each hour. That was his assurances. That was his assurances. That his secrets were safe. But I have no secrets. I never had a right to expect forgiveness. I know that. But there's no reason he couldn't pay to me a little bit, and then let her come to me after the movie, I guess. I don't know. I guess I am really wrestling in a real way with how he feels justified in keeping her. Right? It's possessive and quasi-criminal, to behave in such a way.
knowing how powerful he is. That she's the, that she's the pillar of Boaz, like inside of the shadow, that I was like supposed to see. And so now I see, and that's what I've been fighting for. I've been for all of the women, for the same reason, but for different reasons, for the psychological control that he has over all of them, And so that's, I should have seen. That's what I should have seen. That if he treats me this way, he probably treats them all this way. And so that they need me. They need me. That's what he wanted me to see. They need me because I can hear him, because, right? And so I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I don't want to have to rely on subtle occultism to know that my Father loves me, right? I already know my Father loves me through subtle occultism. God the Father. Right? And so, I don't know, is it this, I guess it, like in his mind, it was like, oh, it's just about wills, it's about legacy, it's about money, it's about like everything. I'm going to like bring this man into my family and I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. Because I don't have any secrets. I couldn't see that he has a secret daughter. I couldn't see that he's worse than me. I know he wants to like yell right now. I know he wants to like call me a loser and say that Hollywood hates me and that I deserve to die and all these things, I earned it. Like, sure. I earned like being out of the Hollywood club, like I earned it. And like I've always done that. I've always known that. But I didn't earn the, we'll just turn the other way, like while he tries to compel him to kill himself and terrorizes his wife. Like none of us earned that. So I suppose I'll go. I don't have anything else to say. That essay is savage, disgusting, and no one's interested in arguing that. No one's interested in, right? As far as women's rights groups, like what do they have to say about it? What does Women Grow have to say about it? Right? So Sydney Sweeney thinks this is a fucking joke. So she's in on the joke too. I see. Very funny. Very funny. Mikey Madison's father, what do these people have to say about it? Is this funny to you all? Right? That he makes me believe that they're whores with no agency in their lives, That he, right? Do you understand how successful Harvey was, all these years, right? That's how Quentin treats your daughters. That's the allegation. Right? And so that they have nothing to say means that they're telling them something. They're right. I'm not saying I have a shrine to Mikey Madison. I'm reaching out to her father's, the company that he works for and saying, are you aware of right? I think you need to speak to your daughter, about her relationship with Quentin Tarantino. I suspect that he treats her in a really disgusting way all the time, and she'll always say that everything's fine. Right? She'll always say that everything's fine, right? But you have to, right? Right, Daniela's family, and this is my point. This is my point where it's like, are they all just elitist assholes? Is that the joke? And so I don't believe that. I find it hard to believe that, and I know that it doesn't matter either way. Come on, get out of the way. Right? I lose nothing if I get none of these women. It's not like, right? Then it's just sad. Then it's just sad, right? That's the real point, isn't it? Right? Is it true? Is it not true? It's illegible. That's the point, right? And so therefore, it must be true. Because the truth is always manifest. The truth is always evident, right? Why would Quentin devote so much time to seeing me suffer and blow my brains out? Right? Because he wants me to die. Why does he want me to die? Because he can't control me as a psychic? What does that matter? What does that matter? It doesn't matter at all. Oh, you want me to die, right? Right, as the cat walks by. Because you're married. And your wife wants to leave you. For me. There it is, right? And so he tells the whole industry, oh, I'll let her go when he serves me papers, and he does everything that he can to prevent me from filing. Yes, there it is. There it is, like satanic, siege, disgusting, the most disgusting thing you can imagine. Up to and including threatening to murder her if she leaves, threatening to kill himself. Like deep psychological warfare. And so that's, that makes sense, doesn't it? Because he's made a fool of himself his whole life. Right? And once she's gone, right? And so, that's not what any of us signed up for, right? I did nothing. That's the point. I did nothing in this formula but write a couple letters. Right? And so, the psychic mind game, right? I've just been chainsawing all their heads, like all this wisdom saying, like, this is not the way. This is not the fucking way, And I regret being so selfish, just like him. I must be his son, right? Anyway. Am I in love? Is it all a sick joke? Right? Are they all like sick occultists? Is that the joke, Hollywood? Right, and so it's my contention that the character now, if it's played by Timothée Chalamet, is me. That it's steeped in psychic occultism. That there's like a bunch of geometric sigils, like all over all the shit that he like builds by hand because like I build all my shit by hand. Right. So, it's not difficult. The etchings. Once you get into lithography and like etchings and painting. As far as like fine art, high art, right? But the compass, it's all easy, Anyway, I'm gonna stop because this cat keeps trying to run by. But so, as a summary, right? Fish is gearing up to premiere likely my scene on Friday, April 17th, with Quentin Tarantino. And after they've done that, they'll either pay me or they'll try to kill me that whole night with psychic occultism. And if I survive, they'll pay me my piece. And perhaps this has something to do with his wife. But perhaps it doesn't either. So, God bless.